Hey everybody, it's Sonic the Hedgehog Rules, otherwise known as the Snarky Entertainment System, yet again. I'm officially reviewing the game Shadow of Destiny, otherwise known as Shadow of Memories. If you don't mind spoilers, I highly suggest you go back and watch my story breakdown of this game to get an idea of what's going on. If you don't feel like it, all you really need to know about the story is that the protagonist, Ike, gets killed and is given the ability to time travel in an effort to stop his own death. As a plot device, this is pretty cool. As a gameplay mechanic, it's somewhat hit and miss. The rules can be confusing at first. When you travel back in time, your present day clock keeps ticking, and if it reaches the moment when you're supposed to die in the present while you're in the past, you simply fade out of existence. Seems straightforward enough, though I'd be lying if I said I fully understand how it works. And I got all 8 endings, so keep that in mind. But perhaps it's for the best, because it keeps my mind coming back to the sheer perplexing nature of this game. This story could have been told in so many different formats that would have possibly been more suiting. Novel, film, animation, yet they opted to make a video game out of it. In all honesty, only about a fifth of this game is actually gameplay. The rest is just a series of extended cutscenes. So with a game built so heavily on just telling a story, you'd assume the gameplay would be just as fantastic to back it up, for instance, like in the Metal Gear Solid games. However, this isn't exactly the case. The gameplay consists of running around, talking to people, occasionally traveling in time, collecting and using items, and fetching energy cells for your time travel device. It is, in essence, rather dull. It's like the moments that we don't see in a movie, the boring extended sequences where the hero travels from one city to the next with nothing exciting happening along the way. Except these are the moments that you play through. Because of this, it's hard to give an accurate description of the gameplay. I would probably compare it to a survival horror game, except that there's nothing for you to fight or run away from. With such an insubstantial villain as fate itself, it's a bit difficult to make that into high-octane nightmare fuel. For the time it was made, Shadow of Destiny has some decent visuals. Each era has its own specific color scheme and little design quirks to differentiate from the others. For example, certain parts of the city on your present-day map might not have existed back in the 1500s. Little things like this mix things up a little bit, which is a welcome addition since you do spend the entire game in one relatively small town looking at the same character models for 4 or so hours. This small but significant attention to detail really is one of the saving graces of this game. Since you can skip already seen cutscenes on subsequent playthroughs, it really is worth beating more than once just to pay attention for the hints and foreshadowing you might not have understood earlier. For example, and I'm going to mention a very minor spoiler here, Mr. Eckert kills you with a vase in one of the first chapters. If you avert this death by making him knock it onto the floor, he tries again later. When you question him about it, he says he has only tried to kill you once. This is technically true since he never had the chance to go through with it the first time around. There are plenty of other moments that will get your brain working to make it feel like a real mystery. And certainly this game does establish a pretty good mystery. If anything, this game has to be commended on its story. Rather than stick to straight plot devices, the game mixes things up on you a few times. There aren't any distinct good guys and bad guys depending on the ending you get and your interpretation of it. Homunculus is a demon, sure, and yes, he is using Ike. But is Ike really any better? Depending on your ending, he could almost be seen as worse. I also have to credit the game makers on not skimping on any of their endings. Almost all of them culminate into some sort of intense showdown, including but not limited to exploding houses, soul eating, paradox exploitation, and bitch slapping. But a story really means nothing if it isn't driven by strong lines read by decent voice actors. The script itself definitely had a lot of care put into it. Apart from the occasional out-of-character line or total non sequitur,
By the way, do you like cats?
most of the writing is pretty solid and at times rather moving. The voice actors are pretty widely split. Eckert's voice actor can easily be commended for a top-notch job. He has such a wide range of emotions to express that he pulls it off seamlessly. Ike and Homunculus are decent too. Hugo and Margaret are two of the weaker ones in the cast, with Margaret sounding like a 5-year-old and Hugo sounding like a cartoon character. Not to mention this guy.
Gee, I don't think anybody can make it out of that mess.
But if you're getting this game just for the way it sounds, I'd turn back now. The music in Shadow of Destiny is awkwardly unfitting. Not even exaggerated to the point of being funny, it's just uncomfortable. I went in expecting a survival horror game, so why was the music reminding me of Bugs Bunny Lost in Time? There are other points I can mention, one being the percentage stat that requires you to listen to every snippet of dialogue in the game for 100%, the other being the superficial boundaries they sometimes force on you. But those are nitpicky and honestly secondary to the main point of the game. I don't really rate games because scores render reviews obsolete, but since people bark like hounds for some sort of a ranking system, I will either recommend it or not recommend it. This game was probably a bad choice for my first review, since I can't wholeheartedly recommend it or tell you to steer clear of it. It certainly has its merits in the story that are really only marred by unnecessary gameplay. However, it is a pretty unique experience, similar to Eternal Darkness, only in that it sends you back to the same places with subtle differences, and has multiple endings that converge to give you a mega ending. I think I'll lean towards don't recommend it. Perhaps it's worth something as a rental, something you can beat in an afternoon and be glad you played once but never intend on coming back to. But you would have to put a low price on this game to be able to justify buying it. Anyway, guys, I hope you enjoyed my first review. If you have any suggestions, please feel free to let me know. I'm here to entertain you. And special thanks and shout out to Jim Sterling of Destructoid.com who recommended I play this game. Thank God for you. Thanks for watching, everybody, and tune in later!